I'll show you briefing notes from the Canadian government on something the mainstream media and politicians dismiss as a conspiracy theory. Yes, it's the World Economic Forum.
The term Great Reset, evidence of some sort of grand plot. What do you have to say to this sort of conspiracy theory out on social media now?
I think we're in a time of anxiety where people are looking for reasons for things that are happening to them, that the difficult moments we're in. It's nice to be able to try and find someone to blame, something to point to, something to get mad at. I think we're seeing a lot of people fall prey to disinformation. And if conservative MPs and others want to start talking about conspiracy theories, well, that's their choice. I'm going to stay focused on helping Canadians get through this, on learning lessons from this pandemic, and making sure that the world we leave to our kids is even better than the world we inherited from our parents.
Today I have in my hands global affairs documents regarding the so-called conspiracy theory of the Great Reset from the World Economic Forum. These are high-level briefing notes to the Minister of Global Affairs at the time, Chrystia Freeland, for the Great Reset meeting that took place on December 8th, 2020. Now, the meeting took place just weeks after Justin Trudeau called the Great Reset a conspiracy theory. Now, as an aside about Freeland, Freeland is a director of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum. She's also the granddaughter of a prominent Nazi collaborator who says she plans to make the federal government's tyrannical emergency powers permanent to deal with Trudeau's anti-COVID mandate critics. And Klaus Schwab, he's about as close to a stereotypical Bond villain as they come in real life. He's this guy here.
We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
And Klaus Schwab, well, he knows who and what he has under his control. Take a look at this.
But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.
Now, back to the documents. I will publish these documents for you to read for yourself. You don't have to take my word for what I'm saying. And since we were only able to obtain these documents through your help and your donations to our special access to information and research website, rebelinvestigates.com, these are also your documents too. So let's get right into it. Here's the run of the show, as the bureaucrats call it, the reason for the season of World Economic Forum meetings. And in this, we find out that Chrystia Freeland is actually the co-chair of these meetings. She's not just in attendance, she's running the show. Look at this. You've been invited by the World Economic Forum to co-chair, along with Taro Kono, Minister of Administrative Reform of Japan, Sigrid Kaag, Minister of Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation of the Netherlands, Tito Mboweni, Minister of Finance of South Africa, Dina Powell-McCormick, partner at Goldman Sachs and Company, and Kent Walker, Senior Vice President, Global Affairs at Google, the fourth meeting of the Global Action Group on the Post-COVID World. The fourth meeting is intended to finalize and agree upon a set of principles for global cooperation created by the World Economic Forum and further developed at previous meetings. 1, strengthen global cooperation. 2, re-globalize equity, whatever that means, it can't be good. 3, rebuild sustainability, sounds expensive. Deepen public-private partnerships. Increase global resilience. Promote peace and security. And, of course, because it wouldn't be the future or globalism without this one, promote gender equality. The World Economic Forum plans to present these principles to a wider array of global political and business leaders during the Davos Dialogues on January 25th to 29th, 2021. And you better believe it, I'll be filing for access to information on any communications they had with Freeland about that meeting. Let's keep going. Key messages. Now you'll see here that this one takes a swipe at former President Donald Trump and his self-righteous distrust of the Chinese government and for not swallowing the CCP narrative on COVID hook, line, and sinker. Look at this. Further deterioration of U.S.-China relations has impacted the nature and scope of international cooperation, including, among others, within the G20, the UN Security Council, and the World Health Organization. Now, in this next part, I can't tell if this is a criticism or a bit of a how-to manual for Justin Trudeau. Let's read. Other countries have used the disruption to increase domestic control and suppress dissent. This may result in a rise of social unrest, particularly in regions where trust between citizens and government was already weak. The pandemic also appears to be speeding up the use of new technologies, often for good, but also with risks of intrusive technologies, digital surveillance, and censorship, sometimes under the pretext of countering, quote, fake news. Now, here's where the World Economic Forum head honchos indicate they will use the pandemic to push for open borders, of course, critical race theory, and critical gender theory. Look at this. Respect for human rights, gender equality, and inclusion must be at the center of all efforts to contain and combat the spread and recover from the pandemic. We all know that when people, regardless of their gender, race, income, ability, ethnicity, age, or migratory status, can fully benefit from and participate in economic, political, social, and cultural life, we build safer, more prosperous, equitable, and more sustainable communities and countries. And then, of course, in real time, Justin Trudeau announces this. Prime Minister announces measures to advance gender equality worldwide. He's following their script. Let's keep going. Here's the hammer to make the push for critical race and gender theory and open borders and to shut up the opposition to these things. It's right here. It will be online censorship to undo social norms. The response to COVID must not, therefore, be allowed to reproduce or perpetuate existing social norms that fuel inequities and social unrest. This applies to the online sphere, notably as technology has come to permeate everyday life at an accelerated pace in places than was the case before. And here's Trudeau doing just that with a brand new online censorship bill, C11, but he's also got a second online censorship bill, C18. Let's keep going, though, from these documents. Under rebuilding equality, we also need to, here we go, build back greener by using this moment to advance climate adaptation and mitigation objectives, preservation of environment and biodiversity, including building more resilient supply chains and promoting a green transition. Under rebuild sustainability, the pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in our international system, shedding light on where we can build back better and what is needed to ensure a future where no one is left behind. Canada views the 2030 agenda as a comprehensive framework for responding to and recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and building more resilient, inclusive and sustainable societies that can help prevent and better withstand future crises and shocks. Climate change and environment. Sustainable development recognizes the need to balance economic interests with environmental stewardship and social cohesion. It is time to shift to a greener way of thinking about economic growth and understand that building back better, there it is, requires us to build back greener. Just as environmentally conscious policies and practices are a prerequisite to sustainable development, so is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. There's a lot of intersectionality, as they say in these documents. Oh, there's the word. Intersectional gender-based analysis are critical to ensuring that our actions have maximum effectiveness and impact. Initiatives that exclude or discriminate only further exacerbate an already dire situation and further risk hard-won development gains. Climate change remains a top priority for Canada, even in the midst of this global pandemic. COVID-19 is testing the resilience of populations and economies around the world. And as with the impacts of climate change, the poorest and the most vulnerable people in both developed and developing countries are often hardest hit. We know that we must do more to address climate change, which is why Canada has committed to bringing forward new measures to exceed, that's frightening, our 2030 target and achieve net zero by 2050 and reach net zero emissions by 2050. And just like Justin Trudeau's announcement of funding for gender equity and his 2 online censorship bills after being given the script by the World Economic Forum, these climate measures are coming. They include a direct attack on the Alberta economy, by the way. You know, when we're all out of work, that plan to do away with private ownership, that scheme from the World Economic Forum, it actually seems a little easier to implement. Don't believe me? Here's the World Economic Forum telling you. While politicians were calling anybody concerned about the Great Reset a conspiracy theorist at Rebel News, we were busy filing for access to information documents to prove these politicians to be liars. Now, we were only able to do that through your generous donations to a special investigations fund, rebelinvestigates.com. Thank you to everybody who donated, but there is still so much work left to do. We'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau, so we rely on the support of you at home. If you'd like to help me continue to do this work, consider making a donation to that website, rebelinvestigates.com.